really happy to be here today in front of the AIA crowd. And joining me on screen is our three panelists. They're one of our clients from Platt Architecture. We have Ren, who is their Director of Finance, Jana, their Office Manager, and Bud, their Senior Project Manager. To kick things off, I think we really wanted to start out with growing pains, since that's the topic today. So since Platt has expanded in the last 3 years, what do you all remember as the initial signs that you needed to look at your internal processes and reevaluate or try something new? Ren, do you want to start with one?
I'll start. I think as in the last 3 years, or 3 to maybe 4 years ago, I think Bud and Parker were really starting to realize that our project list was growing dramatically. And we looked up and we had so many projects to do, and which is a great problem to have. It's not even really a problem. It's a great thing to have happen to your firm. And so the first sign was that our project list was really big. And then I think the second sign was that we were realizing we had more work that could be completed on our timelines. So we had to start looking at what that meant for us and how we could either address that by fixing efficiencies within our process internally, or if it meant hiring new people and growing our firm from like a human resources standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Bud or Jana, do you want to chime in on that one?
Sure, I'll comment on that. I mean, when I first started working here, we were a much smaller firm, and we didn't have as many projects on our project list. And some of our projects were really profitable, some of them were less profitable for whatever reason. And that method kind of worked when we were smaller and our footprint was smaller. But as we grew, that sort of method just wasn't working anymore. So we had to be more efficient and had to figure out how to keep better track of our projects and figure out how we could better track our projects and project our projects moving forward. So that was a pretty eye-opening time when we got to that point.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
For me, I think as just purely an administrator, I started here 4 years ago, and at the beginning, we had maybe like 15 employees not that long ago. And when you only have 15 employees, for example, our website changed, and so all of our email addresses changed. And it was pretty easy to just make those changes manually and just go ahead and update everyone's email address. But when it doubles to 30, those processes take a lot of time. And so I was realizing throughout our growth that, like, if I don't want to sit here and do tons of manual updates and manual work as an administrator, I needed to start automating. So that was for me when I knew.
Tying into that, Jana, with this next question, I feel like when we first sat down and met, one of the biggest struggles mentioned for a firm of your size is what and how much to automate. So could you give me an example of when you had to make a decision like this?
Yeah, as simple as it sounds, honestly, our printing, we have a wide format printer in the office, so we can print out sets of drawings or random sheets. And before, John, an architect, would come up to me and say I needed something printed, and then I would have like a list of 10 questions that I'd have to ask him. And if it happens 1 or 2 times a day, it's fine. But after a while, it was like really difficult to keep track. So I created a tool using the workflow builder in Slack to have a form that when they wanted something made, something printed, they would have to fill out a form, and it has its own channel called print requests. And at first it was kind of silly because John sat right next to me, and it maybe felt weird to have to fill out a form, but it really, really helped keep track of our print jobs and making sure they got mailed to the right people, the right version of the drawings, and the file locations. It was really a really simple and super useful tool for us. And then once we had that, we kind of expanded into doing a lot more automated document creation for specifically our letters of transmittal. We still do those here. And we have a Google form that once a person fills it out, it creates a document in our letterhead so that it looks really, really the same across the whole company. And we also do that for our statement of probable cost. So yeah, it kind of snowballed once we started that print request form.
Yeah, and adding more consistency makes sense.
Yeah.
I think also Jana was really good at pinpointing the things that we were doing on a regular basis, like things that had to happen for every project. And those things that were uniform across project, regardless of what type of project it was, that happened every time you did something, were things that she quickly pinpointed, was like, we need to automate this, we need to automate that. This is how we can do it. And she did a really great job developing tools like workflows and Google Docs for us, which we didn't have before her.
That's great. Yeah, all those repetitive stuff that adds up.
Yeah.
But this question here is for you. So with balancing automation efficiency and staying true to being that family-owned business with your own values and personality is important to you all. What red flags do you look out for when automating something to know that maybe it's not working for your firm?
Oops, he's muted.
You're muted, bud. Sorry.
Thank you. I guess I would say to that, when the solution is more complicated than the current problem you're having. So, and we've stumbled across that several times in various apps and softwares that we've reached out to over the years. Ren could probably comment on one instance, even with Big Time, when we were just having project managers meetings on a monthly basis to review the bills. We had this elaborate process set up where we had like a 6-page cheat sheet that we had to read before the meeting just so we could sort of get through that meeting, and we just decided that wasn't working. So is definitely when the solution is more complicated than the current problem, it's a red flag to me.
Yeah, we use Big Time for a lot of our project management. Right now, it's a great place for us to hold a lot of project information, but we were trying to have certain things automate in Big Time, also have project managers use Big Time on their own in very specific ways. And it was apparent that trying to make that happen in a more decentralized manner was not working for our firm and was leading to a lot of frustration and some errors. And so we returned that to a very human process. And I have individual meetings with each of our project managers to walk through each of their projects. And then Bud and I meet to review everything that the project managers told me to make sure it's on track and that he knows where all those projects are. And then Bud also meets weekly with all of the project managers to discuss where projects are and what's going on with those. So rather than making those more like instant messagey or Slack or just like documents in the computer, we found the value in keeping that a face-to-face process.
Yeah, sometimes there's just no replacement for it. And I know, I guess, Ren, since we're on you, when we talk about project health and financial health, how does your firm really define that success, or what KPIs are you looking for to signal healthy growth?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, we're going to define our project success by client satisfaction and client interaction throughout the process. I mean, at the end of the day, the finished product and how happy a client is getting to that finished product, how satisfied they are with our selections process, all of the things, and then moving in is going to be the biggest indicator of a successful project for us. And we're going to stand by that, whether or not our KPIs are met. And then after that, we kind of have a macro level of looking at things and a micro level of looking at things. And I'd say the macro level is more of looking at our financials and our numbers. And I do that mostly with Parker, our president. And when we look at that, we're looking at operating profits. Always, we're looking at return on overhead. We look at our labor utilization rate, he and I do. And I, my own self, will also look at a direct labor multiplier to try to figure out where we are and whether or not we're kind of in a range that's profitable for us. And then annually, I'll look at our growth. So our revenue growth, did we grow by 5%? Did we grow by hopefully like 8 to 10% would be great. But what that growth is and what our projected growth is for the following year. So those are on a kind of more macro level. On a micro level, to get to those KPIs, to get to that, those operating profits that we're looking for, that margin that we're looking for, Bud, Jana, and I work together to manage individual project budgets that we share with the architects on an hourly basis. So they're able to tie their performance to the number of hours that are put into a project. And those hours are determined by the size and scope of a project. And then the three of us get together to look for trends, like what's an average number of hours that's going to be in a project, so we can schedule that out. And then are we meeting our targets there? And if we're not, are we making up for it somewhere else? Say those are the big things.
Got it. Yeah, having all those trends and benchmarks is helpful. Okay, to wrap up this section, one more question for you, Jana. So after working on your processes, what balance have you found so that Platt stays true to its roots? So where and how did you feel like you landed on a happy medium of that automation and still personality of the firm?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really, first and foremost, it's super important to listen to our staff. I think I work in an office of very intelligent people who have great ideas for the way that we do things. So staying open and flexible with the way that we do things is really important. And it helps people feel like they're not just a cog, that they are involved in the process and they really do have a say in the why and how we do things. That being said, that sometimes bites us. Sometimes you just gotta get it done. That process might not be the best way, and we might even know that it's not the best way, but until we have a better idea, we gotta do work. So sometimes you just gotta do it and make sure you get it done and try to figure out a better process later. Not everything can be democratic, and we can't all have a say in the way that we do things. So I think we've found a good balance of being open to suggestions and being open to new ideas for how to do things, and yet still getting the work done and working with what we have as best as we can.
This first one I see here is from Megan. She asked, when did you realize you needed additional admin staff? We have an operations manager at our firm who started 4 years ago when we were a 3-person firm. We now have 10 employees. We've been making progress with automation and improving processes, but maybe not as quickly as we'd like. Would like to know your thoughts on this. Alternatively, what admin type tasks did you or don't you outsource and your reasons why?
I have a good, I think Ren can also speak to this, but I think one of the first steps in when someone thinks that they need help, or when someone thinks that we need to hire someone, I think first coming up with a job description and putting a list of what that person is going to be doing and see if it's enough for a job. Come up with, I've made a list of everything that I do, every single task I make a list for, and then I can split those up in between me and this new person, whoever they are. And if those 2 columns are kind of equal, then you know there's enough work for 2. Like, but if you know there's not very many tasks to give to that second person, maybe you're not ready yet. So I think first figuring out what that overworked person is doing and seeing what they could hand off to another person first is important.
And as far as what we outsource, just in the last year, I started outsourcing some of our basic bookkeeping, all of our accounts payable. We outsource right now, and we work with a consultant, and she does all of our accounts payable for me, except for project specific things Jana helps me with, because we want to keep them within our project budgets and within the Big Time software. So I think rethinking for my role, what things could be outsourced. And for us, it's very little. I mean, we outsource a few print jobs, but are there any other administrative things that we outsource? We do payroll in-house. We do all of our billing in-house. We do HR in-house. I think what else? Donna?
We sometimes outsource on the design side of things with consultants, but that's not, I don't know, maybe
a little
that's,
IT, a little
yeah,
a
a
little
little
bit of our
IT, we
IT,
outsource a little bit of IT. Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to like networking and that kind of setup.
Yeah.
Russ and Naomi have similar questions about what time or when you knew to add more admin positions like Jana and Ren, your role, or at what point did you feel the need to do that, if you guys remember?
Yeah. I think my answer before at least from my understanding, is how we make a decision. Like if there's someone that's overworked or something that's not getting done, I think that's a trigger to start thinking about new roles. And then doing the work of building a job description for that potential new person. And sometimes, honestly, we've put roles out into the world to hire for, and someone comes along that doesn't quite fit, but then we can do that process over again and assign different things to whatever that person's strengths are. So it might not always end up how we initially planned it, but it's still a good trigger for like, we do need a new person. And that I think is very different than architecture, which is more like we have more work than we can complete. It's I think maybe a little more clear cut than administrative work, which when you always feel busy, it's hard to know, like, am I too busy or is it just normal busy? I think it's harder, but yeah. Renrique, sorry, were you gonna say something?
Well, I have two things. I think Jana's right on the head. So if you're the company earlier that said they used to have 3 people and they had 1 operations manager and now they have 10, I would say you 100% need another person. Yeah. Like I can't, your operations manager must be going crazy. At least I feel like I would be. So like for a while it was me and Jana. And then it became apparent that Jana was doing so much that some of the smaller things that she was doing initially were starting to slip through the cracks, not through any fault of hers. She just had so many projects on her desk and we kept handing her more things. And part of that might be her own capabilities or her natural talents and inclinations. And so we just kept handing her more things. And it became apparent that there was this other role that she could fill that would make everybody else's job easier. And we were able with our fee forecast to know that we could sustain that and hire another person to fill in the role, which was our administrative assistant that she was initially hired to do. And she very clearly defined all the things that she was doing and what would be easy to hand off. And we were very clearly able to see that that's a whole full-time job. Even if you had to hire part-time at first, if it was a part-time role, if you're valuing your admin staff and their ability to do bigger things, then you're going to want to allow them that space to grow because it will only serve your team in the end, I think. But the other thing Jana said was, and I think ties into us being a people first firm. When Platt hired me, I had 0 bookkeeping experience and I had taken classes and I had a certificate, but I had never worked anywhere. And I've been here for 9 years now and they've allowed me to grow into my position, and which has been amazing for me personally and professionally. And so I think if you are interviewing people or getting resumes and seeing people that are good people that you can see that they're smart and adaptive, and you start to have faith in their ability to do things, then maybe you train them. And I think we do a lot of that here, especially on the administrative team.